The MMA fortune teller.
The teller. The teller. The teller. The teller. The teller.
2020, here we come, aiming for a very profitable year, coming off a very profitable 2019 reign. And now we got a UFC 246 to start this year off. What a way to do it. In the main event, we got the notorious Conor McGregor taking on Donald Cowboy Cerrone. You know how it goes. When you got Conor McGregor fighting, it doesn't matter about any other fights on the card. He sells the card himself. Everyone's going to tune in, love him or hate him. You know that's just how it goes. So, but I'll tell you what, if you look at the other fights in this card, they're really not bad at all. We got Anthony Pettis throwing down with Diego Ferreira. We got Holm in a rematch with Raquel Pennington. The first fight wasn't the most exciting. Other than that, though, we got some young, hungry prospects. We got Dawson taking on Skelly. And a couple decent fights sprinkled, here and there. Of course, we got Maycee Barber, a very highly respected prospect taking on Roxanne Modafferi. Sodiq Yusuff taking on Andre Fili. Don't sleep on the entire card as a whole, but you guys know what it is. Conor McGregor taking on Donald Cowboy Cerrone. And I'm very excited to break down the main event here coming up shortly. Before we even get to that, if you guys haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out. It goes a long way for the teller over here. So please do subscribe to the channel, hit that like button. And if you guys aren't already following me on Instagram, please do follow me on Instagram at MMAFortuneTeller_. I'm always putting out content on there, and I'm always reaching out to you guys. So, in fact, it is the best way to get a hold of me. So please do get a hold of me over there on Instagram and hit that follow button. So as stated, I am very excited for this 2020 year, this upcoming year. There's a lot of fights that I'm already targeting towards the beginning of this year, fights that have already been announced. And as I stated earlier as well, 2019 was once again another profitable year. And 2020 should just be on track to be even more profitable than the years prior. The more time that goes by in the game, the more tips and tricks I learn, and the better I get at this game. Believe it or not, you can always learn in this game. Although I've been doing it for almost a decade now, there's still little tricks and tips that I still do learn, and the game is evolving. So you always have to keep up with the times. One thing is for sure, I definitely will make this 2020 year a very profitable year. So shout out to everybody that rolls with me through 2020 and profits with me. So let's get right into it. For the first fight taking place in the year of 2020, the first fight the teller will be breaking down for you guys, we got Sabina, the Colombian Queen Mazo, taking on JJ Aldrich. As far as I'm concerned, this is a solid fight here on the women's side in the flyweight division. Sabina Mazo, as you guys remember, she looked very good in her last fight, coming off a solid victory against Shayna Dobson. A fighter in Shayna Dobson that a lot of you guys liked. A lot of people feel, she's a solid fighter. And Sabina Mazo, at the very young age of only 22 years old, went out there and handled business in her last fight. Got the unanimous decision, worked in her takedowns, her grappling. Her striking didn't look bad whatsoever. Before that, she was coming off a loss against Marina Moroz, who was a little bit of an underrated fighter, in my opinion. And at the time was just more of an experienced, mature fighter, taking on Sabina in that fight. So I really think that there's some big things to come from this girl, Sabina Mazo. If we could fast forward time, take a look at her, say when she's 28 years old, you're going to see her, in the top 10 at least, in my opinion, maybe even the top 5. I really think this girl has a lot of potential. I like where she's putting in work. She's training in some real camps, bouncing around. I know she spent some time at King's MMA, which she's really going to need, because taking on a girl in JJ Aldrich, who in my opinion has some of the best boxing in the division, a very underrated fighter. Yes, I did not like what I saw from her against Maycee Barber. I did like what I saw in the beginning of that fight, but obviously the way that it ended, I did not like what I saw. She kind of cowered and ended up getting finished there towards the end of the second round after starting off very good in that fight. But there's some positive things you could take away from that fight and some negative things. As I stated, I think her boxing is very, very good. It's up towards the top of the division. She's going to work a lot of these girls that just don't have at least average boxing. She's going to work them. Very good footwork, very good hands. You saw her in her last fight. I saw that live against Lauren Mueller. That was a solid fight over there in Tampa. And, she handled business quite easily. But back to the Maycee Barber fight, she started off very good in that fight. And then just completely cowered in that second round. So you always got to kind of wonder if some of these girls put that heat on her, is she going to cower again? That it's definitely something that you have to be careful with. And then Sabina Mazo, we touched upon her a little bit earlier, but in my opinion, this is a girl that she just has that tenacity. She's a tough chick. I don't see her cowering or giving up in there. I really don't. I think she's the type of girl, if you're going to finish her, you got to maybe choke her, put her to sleep, get her in a submission where she has no choice but to quit the fight, to be tapped out or whatnot, or just put a clinic on her and, win a decision against her. She's really a tough chick from what I've seen from her. Of course, it's early in her career and she has a lot to prove up until now, but just going off of what I've seen on tape so far. And this is a hard fight for me to call because I really do like JJ Aldrich, and I've made money on her before. But right here, I'm going to go at Sabina Mazo. I think she's only going to be better in this fight. Coming off her last victory against Shayna Dobson, she's going to be more confident coming off her first UFC victory against a solid opponent. And I think that her skills are only being sharpened more and more every day, especially at the age that she's at. So don't be surprised if she puts that heat on JJ and maybe gets the finish. But other than that, I see her winning the decision either way, maybe working in her grappling as well. So Sabina Mazo to win the fight. Solid fight here in Odi Osborne taking on Brian Kelleher. Brian Kelleher, I got to start off with him for a second. This is a guy, when he first came around, I wasn't the biggest fan of, but this guy kind of grew on me. He's very big with his social media and his, as far as being interactive with the fans. He's always doing Instagram live videos. He's always willing to answer questions. I've had a couple of conversations with him. The dude's a cool dude. And when I say conversations, I just mean, messaging through Instagram and whatnot. I like what the dude's about. I like how he's trying to do a little something in the MMA game more than just fighting. But, it shows that the guy has a brain up in his head up there. This guy knows what he's doing. And I think it's a smart move. But, that's all cool and all. But when it's all said and done, you got to go in there and you got to win fights too. If you want to remain relevant, it's cool that you could rap and you're a good talker and you're going on these MMA talk shows and whatnot and you're getting your name out there. But again, if you're not winning fights, before you know it, you'll be cut from the UFC and no one's really going to remember you and really care to hear you talk. So I really want to see him come out here and get us a big victory. He's coming off 2 losses, but both to solid fighters in Montel Jackson and John Lineker. 2 guys, there's really no shame to losing to either of those guys. And before that, he did beat Renan Barao and Damian Stasiak, which Damian Stasiak is not really a solid win. It's pretty lame, but nevertheless, he did get locked in there with him and he did get the finish. So, and his loss before that too was to Marlon Vera. I'm very high on Chito Vera too. So if you look at the guys that's taken him out as of recently, they're all solid fighters. But this will be a good fight here to really gauge where he's at. This guy Odi, I really like the way that he looked on Dana White's Contender Series. He looked very good in that fight, pulled off the quick armbar. He took on Armando Valerio, who was the favorite going into that fight. So, this guy Odi is well-rounded. His striking's good. He's very quick on the feet. Definitely shown that he has some good submission skills. He'll definitely sub you, man. He's pulling off arm bars, triangle chokes off his back, all types of stuff. So, very well-rounded fighter. I'm kind of torn on this fight. Like I told you, man, I like Kelleher. I like what he brings to the table, and I really want him to get this victory. But I got to keep it real with you guys. I think that the Jamaican sensation, Odi Osborne, is going to slightly edge this fight out, unless he even gets the submission, which I'm not sure if I see happening, but I think he slightly edges this fight out. There's always a chance that Kelleher will be more poised in there, more calm. He already has the octagon experience. But again, my gut just tells me that Odi will be a little bit quicker in there, a little bit more athletic, and his jiu-jitsu game and whatnot's pretty polished up too. So I got to take Odi Osborne to win this fight. Sorry about that, Keller. Tim Elliott taking on Askar Askarov. In my opinion, this is a very closely contested matchup. I've already went back and forth on my pick here in the last couple days. I think I did settle in with a pick here. I'm going to get to it in a minute. First, I'll start off by talking about Tim Elliott. Tim Elliott, this is a guy that puts himself in harm's way in regards to his grappling. He's, in my opinion, overly confident in his scrambling ability. And if you look into his last 3 fights, I mean, he was choked out in 2 of them very early, both in the first round. One to Ben Wynn and the other one to Davison Figueiredo. It really wasn't a good look, especially in that Ben Wynn fight. So, Askar Askarov is a guy that does have good jiu-jitsu. Let that be known. This guy can sub you. So if Tim Elliott makes any types of careless mistakes in there with his grappling, he can definitely be subbed. Tim Elliott, he did look good against Demetrius Johnson back in 2016. That's where a lot of you guys know him from, but he's been around the way for a long time. Looked very good inside of the Ultimate Fighter house, beat a lot of those flyweight contender type of dudes, Matt Schnell, Eric Shelton, a lot of the inaugural flyweight fighters when that division was first announced. And if you look at the guys that he's lost to back in the day, they were all very solid opponents. The Joseph Benavidez, the Zach Makovskis, the Ali Bagotinov, who was on steroids at the time, John Dodson. And he's beat the average type of flyweight fighters, like the Louis Godnots, the Jared Papazian, those types of guys. But, now you got a guy in Askar Askarov, who I'm going to tell you guys now, I'm picking Askar to win this fight. I did initially have Tim Elliott, but the more I looked into how reckless he is with his grappling, I just feel that Askar can definitely capitalize with his jiu-jitsu. Askar is definitely also very capable on the feet. He's not a bad fighter. I wasn't overly impressed with him in his UFC debut against Brandon Moreno. In fact, even though that fight was a draw, I had him losing that fight. Or no matter how you want to spin the decision, I just, you could tell that Brandon Moreno dominated that fight. I mean, it was kind of tricky with the scorecards and whatnot, but I just feel like Brandon Moreno was the better fighter. I do feel that Askar will settle in, this being his second UFC bout. I think, and I believe that Brandon Moreno fight was in Mexico City too, so this will be a little bit more of an easygoing fight for him. He's already fought in the UFC. It's over in Vegas now, and it's taking on Tim Elliott. Tim Elliott, like I said, he's going to give him his opportunities. He is funky, though. He can throw Askar off with his, how funky Tim can be. I just think that Askar will hold his own on the feet. It'll be closely contested, but I think just that edge that Askar, just being the fact that Askar does have the opportunity to pull off a submission, I think gives him that slight edge to win this fight. The stand-up is going to be close. The grappling exchanges should be close. But yeah, I'm going to take Askar Askarov to win this fight. Transitioning to the next bout, we got a light heavyweight matchup. We got Aleksa Camur taking on Justin Ledet. This is a fight that I'm looking forward to. For those of you guys that pay for your ESPN Plus subscription and you watched all those Contender Series fights, or whether you just illegally stream them, as long as you were able to watch them, you guys definitely remember Aleksa Camur. This guy, the American fighter, you'll see him with the Croatian flag very often. He's a Croatian-American fighter. The guy is a beast. I don't know how you guys can forget his performance that he put on with the flying knee finish. I just liked what I seen from him, his tenacity. I liked where his head's at. He seems like he has a very high fighter IQ. And I think this is a good matchup for him here against Justin Ledet. You guys know the deal with Justin Ledet. Everyone hyped up his boxing and whatnot, but he's coming off 2 nasty losses. Johnny Walker got the early finish on him in the first round. Alexander Rakic, it wasn't a finish, but it was even worse than a finish. Just absolutely dismantled him for 3 rounds. That fight took place back in 2018, but that's when Alexander Rakic really got put on the map. And then if you look at the guys that Justin Ledet's beat, they were heavyweight type of fighters, guys that were slower than him, and he was able to use his boxing. And he really wasn't putting anyone away with his hands. He had a couple submissions. He did choke out Mark Godbeer, but Mark Godbeer doesn't have really good grappling whatsoever. This guy, Aleksa Camur, this guy trains with Stipe Miocic. If I remember correctly, and from the research I've done, I mean, he trains extensively with Stipe Miocic. So, I mean, he's putting in time with the best heavyweight fighter on planet Earth, which I think that's going to go a long way for him here. The line is nice. Aleksa, Camur, I like him to win this fight. Grant Dawson taking on Skelly. It's a solid fight here in the featherweight division. Grant Dawson, this is a guy that you guys have heard me talk about quite a bit as of recently. I liked what I've seen from him ever since his Dana White Contender Series debut. Looked very good, got the rear naked choke against Adrian Diaz. Since then, pulled off the victory against Julian Erosa, and then also beat Mike Trizano in his last bout, and I believe he was an underdog in that matchup, and I capitalized on that. So, I'm trying to remember what that line was, but definitely capitalized on Grant Dawson there, and Mike Trizano is no joke. So those are two top prospects, and Grant Dawson came out as the victor. Grant Dawson is what I like to consider a 4-star prospect. That is something you guys will hear me talk about a little bit more. Some of these top prospects, some of these younger fighters, I like to give them a grading, something similar to what they do in college football, with high school recruits coming out. I would consider Grant Dawson a 4-star prospect. This guy has a lot of potential, not quite a 5-star prospect, but just the capabilities he has with his wrestling, his pace. This guy is going to cause a lot of guys problems. He's going to pull off a lot of victories inside the UFC. And, he's a young fighter, but he really needs to get his striking to come around to equal out with his grappling. And this guy can beat a lot of the top guys in the division. Skelly is always a dangerous opponent to anybody. This guy has nasty jiu-jitsu. His striking is underrated. It's not as bad as you guys think it is. Cardio's there. Skelly, it's funny, this is a guy that I used to talk to back in the day. Really cool dude. He likes to bet on fights as well. Me and him used to go back and forth a little bit in the DMs, talking some fight talk, some bets that we were scoping out. I haven't really talked to him on there for about 2 years or whatnot. But dude was always a cool dude, and I always wish him the best, really down-to-earth, cool dude. So, I wish the guy luck, but, he's 34 years old, and he's taking on the young and hungry Grant Dawson. Grant Dawson, only 25 years old. He's going to look better than he looked in his last bout. You guys know what I always say. I say it time and time again. These guys at this age, man, they're sitting in the gym 5 to 6 days a week, if not 7 days a week, multiple times a day. These guys are just sharpening their skills constantly. Grant Dawson will look better inside the octagon than he did in his last bout. And in a fight where he finished Mike Trizano, who, in my opinion, is a better fighter than Skelly. Not that MMA math always works or whatnot, but you guys see the point I'm making. I think Grant Dawson is the better fighter here, and this is a guy that I expect. To pull off a lot of victories in the UFC. Now, like I said, Skelly is dangerous with his jiu-jitsu, so we definitely. Grant Dawson does have to watch out going in for reckless takedowns and maybe getting a neck snagged up or something like that and getting tapped out. That's about the only danger I see is Skelly pulling off a nasty submission, maybe while they're dry in the early part of the fight, most likely in the first round if he does pull it off. However, I don't really see that happening. I see Grant Dawson just pushing that pace, getting sweaty, getting takedowns, and grinding out a victory here. We got two very skilled strikers here in Nasrat Haqparast taking on Drew Dober. It's crazy, man. Drew Dober is coming in right around a plus 250 underdog, and Drew Dober is a very skilled opponent who's really been on a tear as of recently. His only loss being to Beneil Dariush, where he did get subbed. I guess a lot of people feel like this Nasrat fight's kind of similar to the Benny fight, where Nasrat will have the better grappling as well as very good striking to go along with it. Drew Dober is just dangerous, man. Look at him in his last fight. Finished Marco Polo Reyes very early. This guy was a Muay Thai champion, just a nasty Muay Thai striker. Just needs to continue to work on his grappling. It's slowly been getting better over the years. But a guy like Nasrat, I do believe, has the edge as far as the grappling goes. And, of course, Nasrat's striking is no joke as well. The guy's pace, the guy's tenacity. He's only 24 years old. This guy is definitely shown to be a stud. Coming off a very solid win against Joaquim Silva in his last fight. Got the finish in the second round. And Joaquim Silva, in my opinion, is a very skilled fighter. In Nasrat, you take a look against Mark Diakese. I'll put a picture up here. This is when he really got put on the map. Everyone was hyping up Mark Diakese in this fight. He tried to punk out Nasrat at the weigh-ins. Nasrat was having no part of it, and you could tell he wasn't intimidated in the least bit. As soon as that fight started, he just walked right out there and began to bully Mark Diakese. And since then he's really done his thing. He took out T-Bot Gody. That was a unanimous decision, but he just dominated that fight start to finish. And then, of course, the Joaquim Silva fight I talked about. So, yeah, a lot of people are high on this guy, and I think there's a good reason for it. But again, Drew Dober is a very dangerous fighter, and for some reason, I think this fight's going to take place in the feet more than people think. And when you're taking on Drew Dober on the feet, good luck to you. Not a lot of guys are going to prevail in the feet against Drew Dober, especially. Right now, 31 years old, this guy is really hitting his prime, in my opinion. I don't necessarily think that he'll ever be a champion or he'll ever be on that top tier level, but this is a guy that will definitely go out there and just outclass certain types of fighters. And when he's feeling himself, he'll put a lot of guys to sleep. So this is a dangerous fight. I'm going to go at Nasrat to win the fight because it's kind of hard to pick against him right now. I think the line is off, in my opinion. I think the value is on Drew Dober. And I wouldn't be surprised in the very least bit if Drew Dober went out there and just was able to keep the fight on the feet and was able to use his striking to pull off a victory. But still, I got to lean Nasrat. Like I said, this guy is he's really got some momentum going behind him, and I can relate to it. I like what I've seen from him. The guy doesn't take shit, man. This guy walks forward, and this guy, he's a very similar fighter to Kelvin Gastelum. It's funny because he looks just like him, but he has that similar type of edge, you know what I mean? He's not the most physically imposing, but he just has good cardio. He's very skilled. He's tough. He's young. And, I'll go with Nasrat to win the fight. Sodiq Yusuff taking on Andre Touchy Fili. Got another Nigerian fighter here in Sodiq, who's coming off a very impressive knockout, for those of you guys that remember, in his last fight, which was on a hell of a card, where he took out Gabriel Benitez in the first round. Although that fight didn't start off the best for Sodiq. Gabriel was actually pushing the pace on him, but of course he ended up just getting the knockout and then followed it up with the ground and pound. He dropped him, got the ground and pound on him. I liked what I've seen from Sodiq so far. He's capitalized for me. I did take him against Shaman Moraes. He came through in a big way for me in that fight. So, I always got love for guys that have came through for me on some big plays. And have put money in my pocket. Andre Fili, this is a guy, in my opinion, that's really coming around. I wasn't always so high on him, but he's kind of proved me wrong as of recently. I mean, this guy has definitely continued to sharpen his skills and is a solid fighter. Putting in a lot of time at Team Alpha Male, from the very beginning. This guy's lanky. He's long. His striking is underrated. He has a good jiu-jitsu game. And he's coming off a very nice victory against Shaman Moraes. So Shaman Moraes is a common opponent for both of these guys. So, Sodiq, when he fought Shaman Moraes, he wasn't able to get the finish, but, he looked good in that fight. I like the way he's composed on the feet, carries a lot of power. Excuse me. And I just think that Sodiq is a fighter. I talked about it a little bit earlier, some of these top prospects. I would give Sodiq Yusuff, a 4-star rating as a prospect too. This guy's coming up. He's moving through the ranks. He's still very early in his career. I think this guy's a lot of potential, and I think he could be following some of his Nigerian brothers in the same path that some of those guys are going, aiming towards the belts. So I don't know if he'll necessarily reach that pinnacle, but this guy has a lot of skills, and I think that Sodiq Yusuff's going to pull off the victory here against Andre Fili. I think his striking is just a little bit more powerful. I think his leg kicks will come into play. He'll work Andre Fili's legs. I think he can keep this fight on the feet, and I think he can even possibly get a finish. So Sodiq Yusuff to win the fight. Maycee, the future Barber, taking on Roxanne Modafferi. It's funny, when I was taking a look at Maycee Barber, I noticed her nickname is The Future, which is a very fitting nickname. But for some reason, in the back of my head, I thought it was The Savage. But then I realized that was the nickname of her most previous opponent, Jillian Robertson, who's a good fighter, by the way, too. But I now feel that nickname, The Savage, needs to be transferred over to Maycee Barber, because she is an absolute savage. She's the future as well. Maybe give her both those nicknames. I like everything I've seen from her. I love the way she's been calling out Paige Van Zandt. This girl's striking's good. Her grappling's good. Her elbows, her Muay Thai, everything is just nasty. Roxanne Modafferi doesn't stand a chance here. I would tell you guys, I don't see Roxanne Modafferi winning in any type of way. But of course, it's a fight. In a fight, anything can happen. There's always a chance for any fighter to win. So if I were to give you any chain of events that would lead up to Roxanne Modafferi getting her arm raised over Maycee Barber, of course, the only thing I could think of is that Maycee Barber somehow was injured going into this camp, wasn't able to get her cardio on point, isn't able to get a finish early in this fight, and somehow Roxanne Modafferi is able to get on top of her, maybe in the second and third rounds, and is able to hold her down and steal a decision, which we've seen Roxanne Modafferi do in the past. One fight that comes to note, Antonina Shevchenko, you saw her, hold her down and pull off that victory. But Roxanne Modafferi, she's just, I know she kind of revamped her career as of recently. She was able to kind of go 50-50 as of recently, compared to how bad everyone thought she was in the past, where everyone thought she was a complete joke. And props to her for that. But, this is not the fight that she wants. Maycee Barber is going to get a knockout early. I think it's going to be in the first round. I think it's going to be nasty. I think Maycee's going to hit her with some elbows, some knees, tag her up, and just put Roxanne into that wobbly type of mode, which you see from her. She kind of does the chicken dance, as Conor once said. She really does the chicken dance when a gust of wind hits her. You could see it time and time again in a lot of her fights. Just like arm punches that just graze the side of her. She'll start wobbling around and diving in for takedowns. What is she going to look like when Maycee Barber is hitting her with elbows right to the side of her skull, cracking her up? And I really see this fight transpiring just like that. So, rest in peace, Roxanne Modafferi. And speaking of rest in peace, we got Anthony Pettis taking on Diego Ferreira. Anthony Pettis, man, this guy, this guy has not had the best record ever since USADA came around. Not saying that had any influence on his career. I'm not pointing that direction, but that's one thing you could look into. For whatever reason, once USADA came into play, this guy, he loses a lot more than he wins. Since 2015, this guy's only had 4 victories. Back in the day, this guy was putting off 4 victories together in 1 year. Of course, I would say that the level of competition did go up quite a bit. He's been fighting some tough guys, the Tony Fergusons, the Dustin Poiriers, Max Holloways, Edson Barbosas, RDAs and whatnot. Something just rubs me the wrong way with Showtime. He's just, I don't know, he just kind of breaks in there. You saw him in his last fight too. I mean, he made Nate Diaz look like a beast. Diaz using his grappling, just holding him against the cage, butchering up with elbows and whatnot. Diego Ferreira is going to rough him up in this fight. He definitely is. I think Diego Ferreira would probably defeat Nate Diaz right now. I think Diego Ferreira is an underrated fighter and a little bit more polished at this point in the game than Anthony Showtime Pettis is or Nate Diaz. So Diego Ferreira, this is a guy that's only lost twice, to Dustin Poirier and Beneil Dariush. And that was a while ago too. So since then, he's been going out there defeating very, very tough fighters. Some guys that are a little bit underrated too. Marabak Taisimov, a nasty striker, went out there, pulled off the unanimous decision against him. Took out Rustam Khabilov in a unanimous decision. Finished Kyle Nelson. Finished Jared Gordon. Unanimous decision against OAM. Don't underestimate these victories. This guy, he's defeating, solid fighters here. So, and the record of 16-2, it's no joke. He is 34 years old, but doesn't have a lot of mileage on him. If you look at the way a lot of his fights transpired, and I know he took a little break there for a while too. So, what else can I say? I just think that Diego Ferreira is he's gonna be too durable, too strong, too gritty for Anthony Showtime Pettis. Anthony Showtime Pettis can try to use his flashy type of striking and maybe try to pull off some type of head kick or something flashy. He did have that nasty knockout against Wonder Boy, but I don't see something like that happening. I think that Diego is a very durable, tough fighter, and I don't see him going out easy. So yeah, Diego Ferreira to win the fight. I hope it doesn't I hope it doesn't play out too nasty for Pettis, because we've seen him take some damage here throughout the years now. So, but yeah, I got Diego Ferreira. We got a very closely contested matchup here. We got Cláudia Gadelha taking on Aleksa Grasso. Whew, you guys remember Aleksa Grasso's last match? It was so frustrating to watch. I did have a play on her, against Carla Esparza. And Aleksa Grasso is just on such another level than Carla, but just couldn't stop those little fluky-ass trip takedowns and, eventually losing. It was a majority decision based on Carla just having a little bit too much top time, when she really didn't even do any damage on top two. I really like how Aleksa Grasso looked on the feet, but I do not like her takedown defense. She needs to work on her takedown defense. It's been a problem against a couple different fighters here. Of course, Tatiana Suarez is a whole nother animal, but I just think that Cláudia Gadelha is definitely going to have the opportunity to get some takedowns and win some rounds like that. Cláudia Gadelha has some very, very strong grappling. She's a very underrated wrestler and a grappler. So, I mean, I see that the line is pretty much a pick'em. I would say, based on where your money's going to go on this fight, I mean, would you rather have the girl that I think at this point in time is going to be the better striker in Aleksa Grasso? Cláudia has not looked that good on the feet. You saw her against Randa Marcos. Randa Marcos was working Cláudia on the feet, and Cláudia was forced to go in for takedowns to win that fight. Aleksa Grasso, in my opinion, is a better striker than Marcos, and that leads me to believe that Aleksa Grasso will have the edge on the feet. But then again, Cláudia, like I talked about, Cláudia will have her grappling skills and her takedown skills to take Aleksa Grasso down and probably win the fight like that. And that's the route I'm going to go. I'm going to go with the stronger wrestler and stronger grappler, especially when Grasso has shown to be incompetent with her takedown defense at times. That's going to lead me to pick Cláudia Gadelha to win the fight. Moving on to the big heavyweights. This is an intriguing heavyweight matchup, in my opinion. You got Alexey, the boa constrictor Oleinik, taking on Maurice, the Crockett boss Greene. And I say this is an intriguing matchup because Alexey Oleinik has shown to be a very savvy submission artist, pulling off all types of special submissions off his back, pulling off a submission that really they should change the name to the Oleinik choke. I mean, the Ezekiel choke from bottom. It's ridiculous. I mean, this guy's pulled it off time and time again. He's shown to be a crafty submission artist, even besides that punch. Besides that submission, he's pulled off arm triangle chokes, neck cranks, all types of stuff. The guy is a very skilled jiu-jitsu practitioner. Then you got the Crockett boss himself. This guy is the epitome of a basketball player turned over to MMA. This guy's lanky. He has good footwork. He's somewhat athletic. When I say athletic, I don't get it twisted, thinking that the type of athletic type of guy I'm talking about. I mean, he has good footwork. When I say athletic, he's quick. He's quick with his footwork. He is a little stiff with his upper body, but he uses his reach very well, and he has an amazing reach, 82-inch reach, one of the longest reaches in the UFC. And I like what I've seen from him recently. Of course, his last bout did not go nice for him. Sergey Pavlovich took him out early in the first round, really put a number on him in that fight. But before that, he looked good against Junior Albini, Jeff Hughes, Michael Batista. He looked good in those fights. So, of course, those aren't top-level competitors. But, this is a guy, Maurice Greene, that, he comes in there to win the fight, and he knows how to use his reach. And if you're not able to get in on him and you sit there and you make it a little pitter-patter fight from the outside, he'll use his striking to pull off a victory. That's for sure. You saw him do it against Jeff Hughes, and Jeff Hughes is not a bad fighter. Jeff Hughes actually has some good boxing himself. So, but then you got Alexey Oleinik. Alexey Oleinik, this is a guy, I already talked about his submission skills. His striking is not the worst. It's a little bit underrated. A lot of people think because he's older and stiff, his striking is horrible. This guy has put people out himself before. One fight that comes to note, he took out Jared Rosholt some time ago. It was a while back, but still, this guy, he has a little bit of power. I think that Oleinik will be a little bit more crafty in there. I'm hoping that he can get the fight to the ground and show off some of his submission skills, because I really think if he's able to get this fight to the ground, he'll show to be light years above the Crockett boss in there. If the Crockett boss is able to stuff those takedowns, keep the fight on the feet, I could see him winning this fight on the feet, using his reach, and outpointing the boa constrictor here. This is a little bit of a tricky fight. I think I'll sit back and just watch how this goes at the moment. But, you never know with the teller. He's got some time up until fight night, so we'll see if there's a possible play there. Getting close to that main event spot. We got the co-main event here. Holm taking on Raquel Pennington. I touched a little bit upon this earlier, that this card, it has its spots here and there, but it's not the most stacked. But it's really irrelevant at the end of the day because you got Conor McGregor taking on Cowboy Cerrone. When Conor McGregor fights, it's almost like it's a boxing match. A lot of boxing cards are like that too. They're just main event heavy. That's it. I mean, people tune in just to watch the main event. And that's kind of what you're seeing here in a way, because this co-main event spot, Holm versus Raquel Pennington, we've already seen how this fight plays out, and it was not entertaining in the least bit. I remember exactly where I was when I was watching this. This was Holm's UFC debut. It was a very lackluster performance. It wasn't that entertaining. And Holm, she barely snuck off with the victory that night. A lot has changed since these two women fought, the first time. Holm is coming off a devastating knockout against Amanda Nunes. And she's been through some wars, since the first time these girls fought. And she's also won the bantamweight champion against Ronda Rousey, since the last time these girls fought. So, a lot has happened. A lot has happened. Raquel Pennington, in my opinion, this girl has shown to be a better fighter than a lot of people thought that she was initially. This girl's pulled off victories against Miesha Tate, Irene Aldana, Betch Correa, Jessica Andrade, which is probably her most impressive win that she has on her resume. And really, the way that she fought Holm in the first bout was a notch on her resume at the time. Holm was an undefeated top prospect, 5-star prospect coming into the UFC up until that time. And just the way she fought Holly in that fight was a notch on her resume. And then, stringing off 4 victories after that. So, yeah, Raquel Pennington is a very underrated fighter. Both of these girls were taken out by the champ Amanda Nunes. Of course, Amanda Nunes finished Pennington in the 5th round. That was a nasty fight. She just worked on that leg the entire fight and then eventually just broke Raquel Pennington in that fight. Holm just got completely put to sleep. But again, Amanda Nunes, top 2 women's fighter of all time, in my opinion. And, so these girls are going to run it back. We'll see what's changed in the octagon since the last time they fought. I could see it being a similar type of fight. Holm will try to keep the distance, try to use her striking on the outside. Raquel Pennington will try to rough her up, get on the inside, use her boxing, try to clinch her up. And I think this fight will play out very close. But I'll give Holm the edge. I think that she'll be motivated. I think that she's had a little bit of time off since the knockout, and I just think that she's a more athletic, skilled fighter. So I'll give her the edge and that right, and I'll edge her to win the fight.
Conor has no right coming up to 55. There's no way he's not going to stand a chance. We're too big for him. We're too strong. So you can take your little English ass and get on.
You're too slow and too stiff. You're stiff as a board. I'd snap you in half. And that's it.
The infamous Tate that the Notorious One had with the one and only Cowboy Cerrone that was heard around the world. One of the most infamous press conferences we've ever had. Since that day, at least I can speak for myself, I've always wanted to see this fight transpire. I know a lot of you guys did. I know there's some haters out there too, and I'm going to get to them in a minute. A lot of people are underestimating Cowboy Cerrone, a true legend of the game, a guy that holds all types of records in the UFC, a guy that is a true threat to anybody in the welterweight or lightweight division. I can go on and on about this guy, but this is a fight that we've needed to see happen. This is a fight that, in my opinion, is happening at the perfect time, and I can't wait to see what goes down in less than 13 days up until this point. Now, I'm going to spew some shit into your guys' ears for all you McGregor haters out there. I'm gonna let you guys know right now, so you guys might as well just take a seat, sit your ass down, and listen to it, because for any of you guys that have been hating on what Conor McGregor has been doing as of recently, saying that he's a trash fighter, that he's overrated, he's all mouth, I love to spew the facts to you guys. I love it because I do it time and time again. This is a guy I heard people talking about, he's coming off 2 losses, and he's still getting all this hype, and if he wins, he's getting a title shot. It's not deserved. That's all complete horseshit. Conor McGregor is a guy, he's coming off a loss to Khabib Nurmagomedov, who in my opinion, there's no question, this guy is probably the best fighter in the game, hands down. Undefeated, has never lost a mixed martial arts bout in his life. A guy that is an extreme specialist at what he does. He's very well-rounded as well, but an extreme specialist in the grappling field, and he just dominates everyone that he faces. There's no shame in that loss. You guys can take a magnifying glass all you want and just stare at it all you want, but there's no shame in that loss. And McGregor had his spots. He looked decent in that fight. And I think if they run it back, McGregor has a real shot to win the fight. Before that, he loses to Floyd Mayweather in a boxing bout. Floyd Mayweather, quite possibly the greatest boxer of all time. To listen to people talk about, oh, Conor McGregor got his ass whooped, oh, this and that, to listen to the level of incompetence of combat sports from some of these people just drives me absolutely insane. Do you understand what it takes for a person who's never had a professional boxing bout, who's strictly trains mixed martial arts, to come over to the boxing world, step into the ring for 12 rounds against, like I said, quite possibly the greatest boxer of all time? For him to go 10 rounds against Floyd Mayweather, for him to land some of the significant strikes that he did in that bout, it's ridiculous. It shows how truly skilled this guy is. But yet, haters will talk shit about him losing to Floyd Mayweather, not even comprehending the reality of the situation. So first off, we'll touch up on those two most recent losses, which in my opinion, they're nothing. Like I said, probably the greatest MMA fighter of all time and probably the greatest boxer of all time, quite seriously. Let's go back before that. Conor McGregor takes out Eddie Alvarez with ease, absolutely styles on him, puts his hands behind his back, everything, just completely styles on him. Wins the rematch against Nate Diaz up at 170 pounds. He shows that, coming off a loss to Nate Diaz, he can go back to the drawing board, use his fighter IQ to come back, plan properly, and come back, and in my opinion, win the fight convincingly. I know that some people say they think Nate won that fight. I think if you rewatch that fight, McGregor easily won 3 rounds, and McGregor landed the most significant shots of the fight time and time again, dropping Nate multiple times in that fight. So, of course, he had only that one loss to Nate Diaz, as of any time recently. Then we run it back. Takes out Jose Aldo. Up until that time, Jose Aldo was the absolute truth at featherweight. At that point in time, the greatest featherweight fighter of all time. Nobody can touch this guy. Takes him out in the first round. Before that, he takes out Chad Mendes, a fight that he took on short notice as well. A change of opponent, at the last minute. Takes out Chad Mendes, a wrestler. People talk about, oh, Conor was getting taken down, this and that. How can you guys overhype these little pussy takedowns that Chad Mendes has, as Conor McGregor gets right back up to his feet and continuously puts a beating on Mendes until he gets the finish? He's taking out guys like Dustin Poirier in the first round. Took out a guy like Max Holloway. I mean, these are true legends of the game. Max Holloway, Dustin Poirier, a solid fighter in Chad Mendes, a legend in Jose Aldo, Nate Diaz, a very solid fighter that's way bigger than him, Eddie Alvarez, one of the greatest lightweights to ever do it. I mean, you guys like to underestimate Conor McGregor. You guys have to get with it, man. You guys got to wake up. So now that I got that little vent off my chest, let's start breaking down this fight. Let's get into the nitty gritty. How is this fight going to transpire? Well, I'll tell you how I believe this fight's going to transpire. In my opinion, the most likely outcome we're going to have is we're going to have McGregor go out there and take Cerrone out in the first round. I've seen Cerrone taken out in the first round a couple of times. This is a guy that if you pressure him and if you bring the heat to him, he can be finished early. He can be finished very early. We've seen RDA do it to him. We've seen Jorge Masvidal finish him in the second round. As of recently, Justin Gage, he took him out early as well. Tony Ferguson, that was a controversial fight, but that was a fight that, make no bones about it, Cerrone was trying to get out of there. He knows not to blow his nose like that. He was looking for a way out. I will give him credit in the sense that he did better than I thought he would. I thought he wouldn't even have made it out of the second round, let alone he did complete the second round, so I'll give him that, and he looked a little bit tough in that fight. But Tony Ferguson isn't necessarily the type of guy that's going to finish you with that one shot early. He likes to wear on you. He's a nasty motherfucker. He likes to wear on you, break you down, and torture you in there. And that's the route that Ferguson was going. And if that fight continued, that's what would have happened. So I just think that McGregor has the power in his hands to work the body. I just see him hurting Cowboy. I see him finishing him in the first or second rounds. Now, if McGregor does not get that finish early, I definitely do think that McGregor could be in danger in this fight. I do think that Cowboy can start to work his Muay Thai. Of course, McGregor has struggled with his cardio at times, and if he starts to get tired, I wouldn't be surprised if Cowboy used some savvy takedowns, used his jiu-jitsu, and was able to pull off a submission. Cowboy has very underrated submission. He has a very underrated submission game. His jiu-jitsu is nasty. So, I've been harping on McGregor all this time too. I mean, don't get it twisted. I think Cowboy is one of the greatest to ever do it. There's a reason why he has all the accolades that he has, and a lot of you guys are underestimating him as well. And you've seen it as of recently too. I mean, he was an underdog, I believe, in all three of his last wins, against Mike Perry, Alexander Hernandez, and Ali Quinta. So, you don't want to underestimate Cowboy too much. Very well-rounded fighter. I do think that Cerrone has more ways to win the fight. I just think that McGregor's way to win the fight is a lot more likely. I just think you guys are going to be shocked. I think the McGregor haters are going to be shocked. I think a lot of you guys forget how skilled this guy is. Like I said, the two losses that he had as of recently, losing to Floyd Mayweather and Khabib, he didn't really get to show what he's made of. And when you put him in there with these above average, mediocre, good fighters, you're going to see what an excellent fighter can do, and that being Conor McGregor. So UFC 246, in my opinion, this is a red carpet type of event. You guys know they come around once in a while. And whenever you have a card with Conor McGregor on it, it's a red carpet event. You guys know that. So I'm super excited. The teller is going to be hitting the town dressed to impress. I already have 3 plays targeted for this card. Could possibly be 4, but 3 solid plays that I'm aiming for on this card. For those of you guys that are not signed up, you guys know the deal, man. Reach out to me. I'm telling you, solid plays. You guys will profit for UFC 246. I feel extremely confident about it. So get at me on Instagram, MMA Fortune Teller _ DM me. Comment below for contact information if you don't have Instagram. And this card's going to be a big one. I'm telling you guys. Another thing I'm going to start doing, for those of you guys that are interested, comment below your 3 most confident picks for the card, and also put the method of victory. Whoever does the best, I will shout out maybe 1 to 2 people, maybe even possibly 3, depending on how many people comment below. And I'll shout you guys out in the next video that I do for the next event. So on that note, you guys, like I said, enjoy the fights. Signing out,
MMA
Teller.
Fortune Teller.
The teller.